Welcome to Sharing the Light, the Sunshine Cathedral's talk show webcast where we discuss theological, ethical, spiritual, and social issues with the cathedral's pastoral staff. Sunshine Cathedral is a metropolitan community church affiliated with the Center for Progressive Christianity. We're located in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Now, we hope you will enjoy this episode of Sharing the Light. Hello and welcome to Sharing the Light. I want to thank you for joining us. Today we're joined by our senior pastor, the Reverend Dr. Durrell Watkins, and also by our staff clergy, Reverend Michael Diaz. Our focus today is looking at anti-Muslim violence isn't Christian. Anti-Muslim violence isn't Christian. So we're going to ask our senior pastor to lead us off in this discussion on this particular topic.
Well, it is a very sort of hot topic these days. I mean, on the internet and even in churches and in our denomination even, where our denomination is increasingly taking a bold stance against anti-Muslim violence, as has the National Council of Churches. But as we do so, there is always someone who says, well, I don't know, that's kind of controversial. That's good. It's amazing to me that it is controversial to anyone to oppose violence, to oppose being disrespectful to our neighbors. And so, but the fact is that we have allowed ourselves to become very sort of xenophobic, very afraid of the other, very distrustful of the other. And that's sort of always been the case, and who we're targeting a lot these days are our Muslim friends and neighbors. It has been gay and lesbian people, it has been communist, it has been African Americans, it has been Jews, there's always been an other in our culture that we had to, it's been immigrants. And so the problem isn't the group that we're focusing on. The problem is that we always need an enemy, and we always seem to find one. And I don't think that that is the message of Jesus, who tells us to love our neighbors as ourselves. And so if we're going to live into the message of Jesus, I think that isn't about being against people, about denying the sacred value and the innate dignity of our neighbors who happen to worship differently than we do, or look differently than we do, or have different political opinions than we do. So anti-Muslim violence, of course, isn't Christian. It's not even American. It's not even humanistic. It's just, there's no way, whatever your approach to rightness is, it isn't right to be anti-Muslim or anti-anybody, and certainly to express concerns and fears with violence.
Okay, Michael, your take on our topic today, anti-Muslim violence isn't Christian.
Well, I think many people, most all people would agree that the prominent figure in Christianity is Jesus. And how could the most prominent figure in our own religious tradition, who suffered himself at the hands of violence, was conspired against, was put on a cross, tortured, was a victim of violence himself because he expressed certain aspects of his own faith that others did not agree with. And for a person like Jesus to be subject to violence, and for the followers of Jesus all of a sudden to want to commit violence because of the certain faith aspects of other groups, is just inherently, it doesn't add up at all. So why would anyone want to advocate that any kind of violence is Christian when Jesus Christ himself was a victim of violence?
You know, we've looked at this topic, I don't think we actually looked at it before, but one of the things that strikes me about this topic, and you pointed out in your opening statement there, is that there has always been an other. Why does this particular other right now make this such a hot topic?
Well, because on September the 11th, 2001, our privilege was threatened. And on September the 11th, 2001, a myth of our superiority and our safety was shattered because terrorists, people who were angry with us and desperate enough to do desperate things, attacked our country, and so it attacked Washington and rural Pennsylvania and New York City, and they happened to be Muslim. They also happened to be Saudi. They also happened to be male. There were a lot of things, and because we suddenly felt vulnerable and scared, whereas before we had felt invulnerable, where we felt sort of indestructible, this day we got to experience one day what a lot of the world experiences every day and has for a lot of time. And so we, for the first time in a long time, maybe since Pearl Harbor, felt really, really vulnerable, really, really afraid. And out of our fear, we're trying to feel safer by attacking others, by marginalizing others, by demonizing others. And the thing is, Islam did not attack us. People who did not represent Islam well attacked us, just like Christianity should not be blamed for the Inquisitions or the Crusades or for more recent wars that have been done to acquire land or oil, just because the people who orchestrated that happen to be Christian. There are people who do think terrible things who do not represent the best of their tradition. And that certainly happened on September the 11th. But and we certainly want to hold the people who hurt us accountable. We certainly want to experience justice, but we don't get that by painting the entire Muslim world with a broad brush and making them the enemy. They aren't the enemy. They're a lot like us. In fact, not only do they we want peace, justice, hope, community, a relationship with the God of their understanding, but they have more in common with our religion than any other religion on the planet. Jesus and our prophets are in their scriptures. They talk about Jesus' mother Mary more than any of our scriptures do in the Quran. And so they are really our closest cousins in the world of faith. And so it isn't... I don't think it's appropriate to treat our near relatives so shabbily because one day, almost a decade ago, something terrible happened.
Michael, your take on the extremes of groups like this, the extreme right or the extreme left in any denomination or religion?
Well, I think one is sort of identity-wise. Who do we identify as? And I think for many of us in the United States of America, we've kind of bought into this idea that we are a Christian nation, but believing that that only means one thing, as if Christian is only a sort of monolithic faith, and there are only certain aspects, 1 through 10, and these are the points of what it means to be a Christian. When in reality, there are many different aspects and understandings of what it is to be a Christian. And some of those aspects do line up with what it means to be a good Muslim, or a good Jew, or a good follower of any type of faith. And so when we, as Reverend Durrell was saying, on September 11th, when people are attacked, we sort of act out of our own fears, and instead of acting with a rational mind and with the God of understanding, a loving God, who we understand, we sort of go back to this revengeful God, this tribal God that wants to protect us and only us, and so we want to attack others. And so I think it's a real opportunity for us to really sit back and reflect on what it means to be a God-fearing person and just a spiritual person in general, especially in this time period.
I also want to point out that, of course, there are blonde-haired, blue-eyed Muslims, and yet I think the stereotype when people think of Muslims, they think of brown-skinned and olive-skinned people. So I wouldn't discount the element of racism and the anti-Muslim feelings also.
And again, this is just one version of this whole conversation. I mean, you mentioned one about the isms. I mean, we can get into the isms of all of this, and we can really unpack a whole lot. But I want to thank you two for joining us here today on Sharing the Light, and I want to thank you for being with us today. Thank you for joining us for another great episode of Sharing the Light. Tell your friends about this online ministry, and when you're in Southeast Florida, make sure you worship with us on a Sunday at the 9 a.m., the 10:30 a.m., or the 6 p.m. service. And now for a final word from our senior pastor, the Reverend Dr. Durrell Watkins.
Email me at durrell@sunshinecathedral.net if you have a religious question or if you'd like to subscribe to our daily devotional magazine, Spirit and Truth. We'll send it anywhere in the United States for an annual donation of any size. You can also email us prayer requests, or you can make donations on our website, www.sunshinecathedral.org. You'll also want to check out our great performing arts series, religious education classes, conferences, and other exciting activities. For now, we wish you many blessings on your spiritual journey.